Welcome back, everybody. We took we had a little bit of a break, and now we're back. So, I'm going to get into something kind of fun today. We're going to kind of delve back into a couple of myths regarding our childhood, which can be a um, super fun way to kind of deconstruct our programming because we see so much stuff about the inner child and how the inner child affects your whole life. How whatever happens to you by age 7 kind of sets your whole life. There's been a lot of things that pretty much say everything you've learned by 7, you're kind of done. You can't change anything. That's kind of the very human way to look at it. But there are a lot of studies out there that kind of say by age 7, you've developed your personality, you've developed how you're going to react in every situation pretty much. And by age 7, there's nothing you can do about anything in a sense. So I want to kind of delve into that more, and I want to kind of try to debunk some of that. So I'll take questions after I get past this initial discussion, and then if you have a question about that, I'll answer it, or another type of question, I'll answer it. Okay, are we really pretty much set by age 7? Now I'm going to say no, we are not set by age 7. But what does happen by age 7 is you do start to develop certain beliefs about yourself, right? And that can come as soon as when you're an infant. It can come as you grow older. I know if I look back in my childhood, I can look at certain situations that made me kind of really set certain beliefs. So we're going to take a couple of examples. And one example we can always use, because this happens to a lot of children, where whether you have siblings, whether you have, or if you're the only child, you might not experience this to the same extent, but you might experience it with parents, where you either felt like you were not good enough for your parents, you felt like one child was favored, your grandparents favored one child over the other, and you kind of get this I'm not good enough belief going, right? And because the other child, you felt they got more attention, they got more, even if it wasn't more stuff, it was the energetic relationship with either the parent or the grandparent, and you felt like, well, they don't like me the same way. They treat them differently. They like them more. And the funny thing is as we get older and as we continue our growth and our journey, there is some truth to that. And but it's not a personal thing. And we start to be able to debunk that as we raise our consciousness. This is not something you're going to see when you're in your human consciousness. So when you start to go back and try to pick these years apart of your life, and we don't ever want to pick these years apart to go back and relive the moment. So many times people say they want to go back and they're scarred from their childhood and we want to relive it, and we don't want to do that. But we can identify a program we had, and when our inner child, we feel like I really need to heal my inner child. That's a big buzzword nowadays. My inner child, my inner child. We can go back and start deconstructing, wait a minute, where did this come from? Because whether we have set how we're going to react for the rest of our life by age 7, we have set certain beliefs. So what will happen is if I have the belief, wait, I wasn't good enough, I'm going to start playing that out, I'm going to start playing that out in different situations in my life to keep reiterating that. And now it's going to start to embed in as a program. Now it's going to become a program because I have kept replaying it in my field. Because as a child, I believe that, right? So I'm going to keep saying, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. And now I keep stacking up situations that show me that. Now I'm starting to ingrain in my cellular memory this pattern. Now it's becoming a program. Are we pre-programmed with certain things? We're pre-programmed with a human consciousness, which is going to have a certain impact on where we rule from, in a sense, right? Especially once we get to a certain age. Because as babies, we haven't really unlocked the human ego. We haven't started patterning the humans around us yet. So we have that period when we first come in where we are very pure. And we are very still have a lot of our soul within our body. We shine a lot brighter as children than as we start going through life. And we kind of start to go asleep. We kind of come in as babies sleeping all the time. People say, oh, they're always asleep. Well, actually, we're more awake then, and then we go to sleep later on. And then we live our human life, and there's times when we'll start waking up again, depending on where you were, when you were supposed to, when your genetic coding said you were going to start to go through your awakening and your ascension process. But remember, you're setting your beliefs at those ages. And then you start acting from those beliefs and reiterating those beliefs because your energy field is transmitting that out. It doesn't really matter where the original story came from, but sometimes we will go back. There's a but there. There's a but. You will go back and you can deconstruct it. But you don't deconstruct it to wallow in it. You deconstruct it to understand it. You deconstruct it to explain it. You deconstruct it to teach it. Because sometimes if you deconstruct yours, it'll show that light to someone else. And they'll be like, oh yeah, I can see where maybe I did that same thing, or I thought that same thing. But as we get older, and as we go through it, not even really older, as we get more conscious, you're going to start to see where that belief you see where it got set up. You can understand that's why I kept reiterating it over and over and over again. It starts to go through every facet of your life, and you can see how long it's impacted you. We're not even going to get into the multidimensionality of all your different aspects of you. And we start separating off in these moments because we feel like we're not good enough. So we're kind of separating our soul off in a sense because we're not whole. We're starting to buy into these beliefs. We're trying to really activate that human programming. So parts of ourselves just keep separating off because it's a separation state, right? To feel like you're not enough. So as soon as we start feeling that way, whether intentional or unintentional, you know, a lot of these things we see as children, our human ego is, the birth of the ego, the 3-year-old, the 4-year-old, and you start to see it and you're like, yeah, that person likes this, my grandfather likes this child better, and I can feel that and I can see that. Is it true? Probably. But you can also see as you go through life, you're attracted to certain people more than others. You're more drawn to one child over the other, whether it be your kids or your godchildren. You're going to have a different bond and maybe a more complete bond. Complete might not be the word I want to use there. But you're going to have a different type of bond. You're going to feel a bond you don't feel with the other kids. And it's not anything about the other children. It's just the timing when they came into your life. That's a big one. You had more time, you were with them longer, you developed more of a relationship, and now that they're older, you spend more time with them, the other kids are younger. There's a lot of things that go into it, and you just have that soul connection more with some people over other people. And if you take away the grandparents and the parents, and you take away all the human identities that we segregate people off to, right? Those are my parents, those are my grandparents, that's my brother, that's my sister. Take all that away. They're just souls, attracted to different souls. Pulled to different souls for different reasons. It's not personal. It's just how this is one of their soul mates. This is someone they have a stronger connection to than you. As a child, we can't see it that way. As we get older, we can see it that way because we start to understand that we're doing the same thing. We feel more of a connection to one thing over the other. But when we're children, when we're not the thing picked, we start to incur that belief, right? And some people even take it back to, being in the crib and maybe not getting the nourishment or maybe not getting fed when they wanted to get fed. They could even go back farther than that. But I can see where a lot of my patterns got set up because I had this really a false belief that I wasn't, as liked as other members of the family. But it wasn't, it's true in a sense, I might have not had the connection with other people. But it wasn't a personal thing. It wasn't that I was not good enough. It was on a soul level, something totally different was going on. But it has set your belief for years to come. So, yes, at age 7, you've set a lot of the beliefs about how you feel about yourself. And it's in your field. It is now in your field. And you will start now acting out those programs, acting out those situations to ingrain in those programs into your DNA. Over and over and over and over again. So by the time you reach age 14, you now have quite a bit of past experiences that have reiterated that belief. So now they're becoming programs. And now we keep going. And now we're going to get to 21. And to me, that's really more the 7-year cycle when we start to do that. But until we reach certain levels of consciousness, we can't really see what was actually going on and how that was all complete bullshit. None of that was true. None of that really mattered. That was not something that was real, but I carried it forward. And when we start to see all the stuff we carry forward based on not being able to really see energetically what was going on, why was that? Why was it that way? I used to have a friend that would say every time she'd break up with someone, the next person they date, they'd get married. And it had kind of ingrained it into her that she was never going to be the one that was going to be chosen, to get married. She was never going to be the one that was going to be in that situation, because every time she had this happen, it kept ingraining the same thing. And if you would go back to when she was younger, there was always one child more popular than the other child. And you can start to see how it plays out. I was never the one that got picked, right? It was always somebody else. But when we pull the curtain back, you start to energetically look at what's going on. That was what they were supposed to do. That was the person they were supposed to be with. It's not personal. None of it is personal. Do people feel more connection with one person over the other? Absolutely. Absolutely. You can sit there and say, no, that's not true. Every parent can say, no, I love all my kids the same. You're going to connect in different ways with one over the other. That's just how it's going to work. It's not a personal thing, but we want to judge that when we feel that, like, oh, I kind of do have favoritism over this child over the other. We kind of want to judge, as humans, we want to judge that. We shouldn't feel that way. But there's a reason we feel that way. It doesn't mean you don't care and love the child. It's just you have a different connection with one over the other based on so many different things. Different things you're supposed to go through with that child, different soul contracts you have with that child, different relationships, different roles you're going to play with that child throughout their life. It's not as simple as I shouldn't feel that way, right? Because you're going to feel that way. And you feel that way with people. Take the labels off of everybody. They're not your kids. They're souls in a body. They're in a tiny little body, but they're souls in a body. And when we can stop judging ourselves about feeling certain ways, that's when I would say you'd always see people when they talk about the twin flames or the soulmates. And everyone's technically a twin flame. Everyone's technically a soulmate. They're aspects of us. But if we want to go into the even romantic soulmates, which we're going to get away from the kind of parent-child thing for a second, you see all the time where people leave their husbands or want to leave their wives because they've fallen in love with someone else, right? Well, these are things that happen because they're meant to go that way. The soul doesn't care about a human contract of a marriage contract. It doesn't care about that stuff. It's beyond that stuff. These are human conditions we put on a lifetime, right? Once the journey is done with that soul, it's done with that soul and someone else comes in. And that's it. It's not personal. But because we take everything personal, because we don't understand what's going on, it's not really so much we take it personal. We don't understand everything that goes into the decision. And because we don't understand everything that goes into the decision, we create a story around the decision. And we create a story where we're the problem. We're the reason why all this stuff has occurred. And we go back and start peeling the onion back. We can see, well, what we thought was going on is really not what's going on. That had nothing to do with it. Yes, they have more of a connection with that person. That doesn't mean I wasn't worth connecting with. That's just how that played out. Because that was their connection. Can we get to the point where we're happy with connections people have and not be jealous we don't have that connection with them? Or be jealous that we might not find that connection, we might not feel that way about anybody right now. And how come someone goes on and does all this stuff after they have a relationship with us? A lot of times we'll activate people to certain things. We'll activate people to go into a different timeline where we're not in that timeline anymore. I used to have a person years ago that would say, you're kind of a muse. Every time you meet someone, they totally change your life and go and do something totally different. And for a while I took it personal. I was like, how come none of these relationships really work? And these people do 360s and go off. They're either right about to go off and do something amazing, or as soon as, we stop seeing each other, they go off and do something amazing. because we activate things in people. We all have the capability to do that. We all have the capability to activate someone to a different frequency, and that in turn activates them to a different timeline, which in turn activates them perhaps to a different way, going a separate way without us, but none of it's personal. It goes right back into the movie. It was a book. I don't remember. I think it was a movie. Was it the 4 Agreements or the 5 Agreements? I think it was 4 original agreements, and then they made a sequel, and it was 5 agreements, or it was 5 original, and they made another book, and there were 6 agreements. But one of them in there is, don't take it personal. When we start to take things personal, it's our own insecurities that take it personal. You can go back to even something as simple as someone didn't text me back, and now I don't know, did I do something wrong, or are they mad at me? This is a very generic one, but we're going to use it just to kind of clarify the point a little bit. We take it personal because we don't value ourselves enough to know, well, I didn't really do anything, so whatever's going on with them is going on with them. If they need assistance or they want to talk to me, they'll talk to me. We're in an age where anyone can talk to anybody whenever they want to. It doesn't matter if you're 10 minutes away or 2 continents away. If someone wants to talk to you, they'll talk to you. And if they don't, it doesn't matter if they literally live next door to you, they're going to not talk to you. Because you're not technically in their frequency anymore. You're not technically on their earth anymore, if you want to even put it like that. Different timelines, now you're in a totally different earth. You're not in the same frequency. Technically, you don't exist in the world they're in, the frequency they're in, the timeline they're in. If we can start breaking everything out into the timeline somebody's in, the frequency they're in, the frequency we're in, and is that really going to work? And really being honest with ourselves when we look at this, because is this really going to work? Is this frequency going to work with the frequency I'm at? Is this where they are and their beliefs and their consciousness going to work with the consciousness I'm in? Is that really a match, or do I just want it to be a match because of some other reason? And when consciousness is not the main reason, then we now have a human reason. It doesn't mean we won't be in people's lives that have a totally separate consciousness from us and totally opposite consciousness from us, because they're supposed to activate them, they're supposed to show us something, they're supposed to help us clear something. It's not that these people won't be in your life. They'll be in your life, but they might not stay in your life. And that's where the rub comes for a lot of us. We don't like that they don't stay, because everything looks better when it's walking away. And the minute something starts walking away, we take that personal. We don't like it, even if we didn't really want them there. I always say we don't care about closure to things we didn't care about. You can have so many things end and you're like, oh yeah, we're all big on closure because it didn't end the way we wanted it to. That's why we give a shit about closure. We don't give a shit about closure if we didn't care about it. We don't care how it ends. We don't care if we never saw, we met him once and, snuck out the bathroom window and never saw him again. We don't need closure on those things because we didn't really care about our human didn't even care about the situation. It didn't matter to us. Our human needs the closure because it wants a reason and it wants it to end differently. That's what closure means. If we're trying to make ourselves believe we want closure for any other reason, we're lying to ourselves. We want it to end differently. We want to be the one on top of the situation. That's how we want it to end. That's what closure is. We want to win. And if we didn't win, I want it to come around a different way. I want it to close differently because I didn't feel like I was on top of the end of this one. I have a story going that it didn't end the way it wanted it to. When it did, we just don't understand the energetic reason yet and why it had to go that way. Once you can, a lot of these stories get stopped and a lot of these stories get dropped. But sometimes we can totally clear the whole thing unless we go and see where it originated from. That's what takes everybody back into childhood, right? The whole inner child thing that's sweeping. Everyone wants to talk about it, but we don't want to dwell in it. It really doesn't matter. We carry our inner child around with us right now. It's an aspect of us. You have the divine child, which is a soul aspect of us, or the higher aspect of us, and the kind of human inner child, which is the unconscious soul, the unconscious part of our soul, which is part of our human programming, which is part of our human ego, which is part of that whole human consciousness, which is just the inner child. It's our child, our human child, right? It's not the divine child, which is our soul, the conscious part of our soul's child. but we still carry that around. So I don't want people to feel like they have to, let me separate off and go back to live in those moments. We don't so much care about what happened 50, 40 years ago, in my case. It doesn't matter. Who cares? Doesn't matter. It only matters into what you're carrying now. And if that's something you can go, I understand where that came from now, and I understand that's ridiculous. It doesn't mean you might not have to grieve it if you feel like your child wants to grieve it in the moment now. You can kind of laugh at how silly it is when you look back and see how much of your life was impacted by that one belief that you set, not even understanding the whole thing. It's like watching, a half of the movie and then leaving going, oh, this is just screwed up. I don't even know why I didn't want to watch any more of this. This movie made no sense, and I feel like so slighted in this movie. But you didn't see how it ended. You didn't see the reveal at the end about, well, this is why. And then you're like, oh, that makes more sense. I can't believe I based so much of my life and so many of the decisions I made, because whether we consciously thought we believed it, it's still in our field. And that's what people mean when they say so much of your personality, your life is shaped at age 7, because it's in your field. It's in your programming. You do believe certain things by that age. Have you developed the program yet? I'm going to say no. But you have the belief that's going to set up the program as you start cementing the program by going through different iterations of different realities where you get coming back with the same conclusion. Oh yeah, I'm not good enough. Whatever it is, whatever that program is. But that's what a lot of us carry in some form or the other. Even the people who carry the flip of that, whereas I'm better than everybody else, still has in the core, I'm not good enough. If you strip it back enough. These things are things that we carry. We base so much of our life on it. But when we break them down, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. I can't believe and you can also go back. I don't want to say go back, but look at all the way we treated people based on that false belief that this was really what was going on. And when we start experiencing it ourselves, we can now look back and say, oh yeah, but if we go back to the original example, yeah, they did like her more. That's true. Yeah, that's true. They had a stronger connection. But it's not personal about us. When we take it personal about us, that's what's setting it up. And that's what's setting up all of our relationships going forward. So when we start really peeling back, and if anyone has interested in inner child, which is like I said, it's a big thing right now. I see it quite a bit. I see a lot of people talking about it. Don't get so trapped into what the story kind of so much around it. Look at the belief that gave you. The belief is what you still carry, because you always want to bring it back to right now. It's the right now that's important. It's not 20, 30 years ago. It doesn't matter. 40, 70 years ago. You see so many people, and that's what separates us off, because we get stuck in that time. We get frozen in that time. You see so many people upset about things that happened years and years and years ago. And I can tell you, no one remembers the original thing that happened. Everyone's going to have a different memory of it. It doesn't even matter anymore. Technically, in the reality you're in, it never even happened. It's just like in the simulation theory, or in a video game where you'll see stuff in a distance and it's pixel, but you can't really make it out. It's the same thing with our realities we create. As soon as we get closer to the building, yeah, now I'm going to fill it in. So if I go back and try to fill it in, let me fill it in from where I'm looking at right now. It looks different because I'm different. In the timeline I'm in, that's different. The future's different if we want to go future past, which we really don't have, but it's just the timeline, How long am I going to stay in this timeline? How much time am I going to spend here? That's our timeline. We can spend a lot of time in a timeline that goes nowhere because we're choosing to spend our time here. We're choosing to spin our wheels here. We can remember certain things and we can look towards certain things, but we're still in the same timeline, in that same frequency, because we don't want to move it up. We want to keep doubling down. We want to keep going through the same stuff. Now technically we're always going to be moving up, even if it's very small increments. But we don't really see a change when we move that slow. That's why you have the old adage, nothing, the more things change, the more the thing they stay the same. Wait, let me try that one again. The more things change, the more they stay the same, because we technically stay the same. We don't change enough to get a new timeline. We're just kind of moving in and out of the same ones, but the programming that's our beliefs that set our program, that are programming these timelines are the same. I don't say how to put it in, the code's the same, the coding. The coding of the program is the same. It's not different because we're not clearing the program. We're living the program over and over and over again, whether it be work, different relationships with our family. If we take the faces off of everybody, take the role we played, it doesn't matter. Like I said, it doesn't matter who these people are to you in a human capacity. They're just souls in a body. Yeah, they might like one person over the other. They're going to feel more resonance with one person over the other. They're going to have a stronger soul link with one person over the other. That doesn't mean you won't have that with someone, and many people, honestly. Like everyone in your life you have some kind of soul link with to do one thing or the other. But a lot of these things you can't see. But if you can, when you're that age, but if you can see them now, and you can start to see them start to play out, whether it be with children, and you start to see the beliefs they're starting to set, right? Can we bring more consciousness to that? And say, yeah, maybe that I feel a stronger connection with this child over the other. That doesn't mean this child's not special. Whether we try to show it or not, they're going to feel it. They're going to feel there's more of a connection over here. We have to bring consciousness to that. We have to bring light to that. We have to be able to bring compassion to that and not let these things get said. Because once these things get said, these kids will spiral just like we spiraled and keep doubling down on the same kind of stuff. So we really want to look at and not judge the way we feel about things and how we felt about things that happened to us. But don't get so caught up in the story. The stories have to go. We have to be able to look at stuff stripped down, no faces, really no story. And that feels boring sometimes, because human loves a good story. It loves a good story. It loves the drama. It loves the intrigue. It loves the hell out of a story. And it wants to just make it dramatic. And it's just, that's what human consciousness is. That's what keeps us locked in it, right? The good guys and the bad guys and the antagonists and the protagonists, and the victim and the perpetrator, and we need a good guy and a bad guy, and that's what fuels human consciousness. That's what gives it the spark that our human craves, right? If we take everyone's faces off, if you say everything's going to happen the way it's going to happen, all of a sudden this shit's not as exciting anymore, right? And for a while, it takes us a while to get used to that. Like, yeah, this isn't as exciting anymore. What's really going on? Because that's kind of fun when we start being able to peel it back and see. When we first start getting out of it, and we're like, well, this is kind of all stupid. It's kind of stupid. We got all wrapped up in a lot of this stuff, and this doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think that's a good place. What time? Oh, I've been going quite a while. I'll check the chat really quick, but I think I've done enough to, hold on, let me check that and see. Okay. I think I've kind of gone far enough on that subject. I don't think we need to beat that one anymore. If I have any questions, I'll take questions now. If anyone has anything they want to add, or if they want to go off on something else. But I do feel like we've kind of maybe helped peel that off a little bit, where you can kind of start to see different things that we believe. And I know I had a big one this week where I could go back and see, I see where that belief got set. And I see how that's affected so many different things I went through in my life, in so many ways I felt about things, so many things in my field that kept returning back that same thing, because unconsciously I'm transmitting that out, right? So that's why we look at someone and we'll hear the words, but we won't feel the words, because their frequency is transmitting out something completely different than what they're saying. They're saying one thing, and their frequency is we're hearing something else, because they're transmitting out something completely different. We get into those energetic mixed signals. Why don't these realities turn out the way I want them to? because we're energetically projecting out something we don't even realize we're unconsciously, we don't even realize we're doing it. You know, we think we're doing one thing, and you know we're doing something completely different. But you can't really see this stuff until we get to the consciousness to see it. And we want to see it. A lot of stuff is wanting to see it. We have to want to see it. If we don't want to see it, because we're so afraid of what we're going to see. We're so afraid to see the ugly of our human consciousness, you know, and all the ways we treated people and how we felt and how we kept feeding into the whole thing. I feel bad, I want you to feel bad. You know, all the tropes, hurt people, you know, keep just piling them on. Because we take it all personal. And we just ingrain it all. That this is how it is, and this kind of sucks. And I don't want it to be this way. So, all right, I think that's good. So we're gonna leave it here today. I think I'll be back next Saturday. So.